Hey everybody, welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are diving into a devotion called A Blank Page in the Grand Storybook.
Ooh, I love that title.
Yeah, it's pretty great. And it's by Yodeji Oludapo.
I'm not familiar.
You know, I wasn't either before this, but
Okay.
I think this one's really going to resonate with people. So it's all about, how God has a plan for each of us. Like, we're part of this big story. He's writing.
Great, a divine novel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you know how sometimes you get a brand new journal, right? And
Yeah.
all the pages are blank.
Yeah, that fresh start feeling.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, that's what Ayodeji compares our lives to, like with these blank pages in God's grand story, just waiting for him to fill them in.
I like that. It's hopeful.
It is. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. Like, what does it actually mean to let God be the author of our lives?
Yeah.
Not to try and take the pen from him, so to speak.
Well, I'm ready to dive in. Let's do it.
All right. So Ayodeji starts off with this really powerful analogy of the grand storybook, right?
Okay.
And he says that God created us as blank pages, not like finished chapters.
Right. We're not pre-written.
Exactly. Like,
Right.
God's not just watching us act out some script. He's actually writing the story as we go.
So there's room for free will in there somewhere.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's more like he's guiding the narrative, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like he knows the ending, but we get to make choices along the way.
Exactly. And that got me thinking, what kind of story do you think God is writing on your page right now?
That is a good question.
Right. Like, is it a comedy, a drama, a thriller?
Maybe a little bit of everything.
Probably right.
Life's kind of like that.
It is. So how does Ayodeji get into this whole idea of God as the author? Like, does he use any examples from the Bible?
Oh, yeah, definitely. He talks about Moses.
Oh, classic example.
Right? Like, talk about someone whose life took some unexpected turns.
Well, I mean, starting off as a baby floating down the Nile, you can't get much more dramatic than that.
No kidding. And then being raised in the Pharaoh's palace only to end up leading his people out of slavery
Talk about a plot twist.
and then parting the Red Sea. I mean, come on.
It's epic. It is. And what's interesting is that Ayodeji points out that even though Moses did all these amazing things, he also faced a lot of doubts and setbacks.
Like anyone would.
Yeah, he even dealt with rebellion from the people he was leading.
Right. They weren't always happy with him.
No, they weren't. But through it all, God's purpose for Moses remained the same.
It's like God had this grand plan for him, and he wasn't going to let anything derail it.
And I think that's so encouraging because it means that no matter what challenges we face, God still has a purpose for our lives.
Absolutely. He's not going to give up on us just because things get tough.
And you know what's really cool? Ayodeji actually connects this back to a specific verse in the Bible, Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10.
I love when he does that. It brings it all together.
Me too.
Yeah.
So it says, "For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them."
Ooh, I love that verse. This is so powerful.
It really is, because it's saying that God has good works planned for us, things he specifically created us to do.
We're not just wandering aimlessly.
Exactly. Like, we each have a unique role to play in God's story.
So it's not just Moses who has this pre-planned path, it's all of us.
Yeah, exactly. We're all part of God's workmanship.
So we've talked about Moses, this great biblical example, but does Ayodeji give any more modern day examples of people letting God write their stories?
He does. He actually talks about Nick Vujicic.
Oh, wow. Nick Vujicic. That's a powerful one.
It is. So, for anyone who doesn't know, Nick was born without arms or legs.
Yeah. His story is incredible.
It really is. And, it would have been so easy for him to let his circumstances define him, to just give up and say, why me?
I can't even imagine the challenges he faced.
I know. But Nick chose a different path. He chose to rely on God's strength.
And look at what he's accomplished.
Seriously. He's a world-renowned speaker, author, and evangelist.
Yeah, touched so many lives.
And his life is like this incredible testament to faith and perseverance.
It really shows that God can use anyone no matter their circumstances.
Right. Like, God doesn't look at our limitations the way we do.
He sees our potential.
Exactly. And he can take even the most challenging situations and turn them into something beautiful.
Like a masterpiece.
Exactly. And that's what Ayodeji's getting at. God can transform any situation, no matter how difficult, into a testament to his glory.
Wow, that's powerful.
It is. And it makes me think about all the times I've tried to control my own story.
Yeah, I've been there.
Like when I've tried to force things to go my way instead of trusting God's plan.
It's hard to let go sometimes.
It really is. And that's what Ayodeji challenges us to do, to surrender to God's authorship.
Okay, so what does that actually look like?
Well, it's not about being passive, just sitting back and letting life happen to us.
Right. It's not about being a doormat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about actively choosing to trust God, even when we don't understand what he's doing.
Like having faith that he knows what's best for us.
Yeah. And that he has a plan even when we can't see it.
It's like saying, okay, God, I trust you. I'm giving you the pen. You write the story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, it's not always easy. But when we do surrender to God's plan, amazing things can happen.
So are we saying that we have no say in our own stories then?
Not at all.
Yeah.
I think it's more like a collaboration. God's the author, but we're the characters, and we have the freedom to make choices.
But he's guiding the overall narrative.
Yeah, exactly. And he can use our choices, both good and bad, to further his plan.
Like even our mistakes can be redeemed.
Exactly. So it's not about being perfect, it's about trusting God's guidance.
That takes a lot of pressure off.
It does. And one thing I really appreciate about Ayodeji's devotion is that he reminds us that our stories aren't just about us.
Right, they impact others.
Exactly. He says that God never writes a story for just one person.
So it's like our lives are interconnected.
Yeah, like we're all part of this big tapestry.
And each thread is important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that means that our experiences, both good and bad, can inspire and impact those around us.
So our struggles can actually help someone else.
They can. And our victories can give others hope.
Wow. So even when we're going through tough times, our story can still have a positive impact.
Absolutely. Because God can use anything for good.
That's comforting.
It is. So,
Yeah.
It makes you think, who might be impacted by your story?
Yeah, who might be watching, learning, or drawing strength from our journeys.
It's a humbling thought, isn't it?
It is. And it makes me want to live my life in a way that honors God and inspires others.
Me too. Because ultimately, our stories are all part of God's grand narrative.
And they all have meaning and purpose.
So if your life is a story being written by God, what kind of story do you want it to be?
That's a great question to ponder.
It is. And for more inspiring devotions like this one by Ayodeji Oladapo, visit devotion.leadwaymission.ca.
You can also find the deep dive on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, and pretty much anywhere else you get your podcasts.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.